Hey, Trailblazers, this is Jason, your host of the Trailblazing Texas podcast. Before we jump into our latest episode, I've got some incredible news for you. Are you gearing up for your next big hike or backpacking trip? Well, we at Trailblazing Texas podcast have partnered up with Trekker Joe's, the ultimate Texas outfitter, to bring you something I feel absolutely special. Listeners, you of the Trailblazing Texas podcast can now get a one-time 15% off their gear purchases at Trekker Joe's. That's right. Whether you're a first-time customer at Trekker Joe's or a repeat customer like me, you can save big and hit the trails well prepared. So upon checkout, use code TTP15 to claim your 15% discount and in the process support an amazing local Texas business. So happy trails, and don't forget to tell your hiking buddies. Now on with the episode. Welcome to the Trailblazing Texas podcast, where we embark on a journey through our diverse Texas landscapes and breathtaking trails while always engaging with our amazing Texas hiking community. So settle in, tighten up those bootlaces, and get ready for the thrilling tales awaiting for you on this episode. Welcome to the Trailblazing Texas podcast. I'm your host, Jason, and we have an absolute very first for the podcast. I've had probably over the last year and a few months of having the podcast, probably about 50 or 60 requests to do trip reports. And as you may or may not know, if you follow me on social media, I had a massive backpacking trip planned and almost executed completely. And so I thought this would be a wonderful opportunity to, do a trip report and see how this goes. And also, we have a very special guest, Todd, who's been on a few of the podcasts in the past. I think I joined him on this hiking adventure. But Todd, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. And you are always welcome on the podcast. So just to kind of kick this off, I thought that it would be kind of cool just to kind of have this as an interview of our trip to the Guadalupe. Well, it was through the Lincoln National Forest, through Carlsbad, and through the Guadalupe Mountains. All right, Todd, just give us a brief introduction. Any social media things that you want to share where people can follow your adventures, any Facebook pages and stuff that you've started that you would love our listeners to be a part of?
All right. Thanks, Jason. If you're interested in following me on social media, it's Todd versus Todd on Instagram, on YouTube. Our Facebook group that Jason is part of is the Guadalupe Mountains Backcountry Hikers. We focus more on the backcountry and not just Guadalupe Peak.
All right. For this hiking adventure, why don't you set the stage? So the first thing is, where did this take place?
Well, it started in the Carlsbad Caverns backcountry and went up through Carlsbad into the Lincoln National Forest, through the Lincoln National Forest, and at the state line, we jumped over into Guadalupe Mountains National Park. And the reasoning for it was there's a big chunk of the Guadalupe Ridge Trail currently closed. So I was looking for something comparable that Jason and I could do.
Kind of going back, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think when you were planning this trip, because this is your baby, that's kind of how we started talking. You had planned this out. This was about 2 years ago, maybe 3.
I don't think it's been that long, but yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, you made the statement that, is there anybody out there that's just sitting there like trying to plan a long trip through the Guads and stuff? And it was funny because at the same time I was, not to the extent how you put all this together, but I was going through, if I hike out to Bush and then connect to Blue Ridge and then drop down here, but you had made this statement. It was just kind of funny, and that's how kind of we started kind of connecting. So just to let the listeners know, how did you just come up with this plan, and like what was the mindset, really how this came to fruition?
Well, I think the post you're talking about is definitely some of this route has its seeds in that post. I was looking for the longest route you could do within Guadalupe Mountains National Park that did not repeat any trails. So, how long of a trail can I string together where I'm not having to backtrack? And I came up with 66 miles within the park with no repetition. And then to add to that section of the GRT, that bumped it up to 100.
Yeah. So just to kind of recap, what was the total distance of the plan, elevation gain, and then also for the listeners, what experience level of a hiker backpacker do you think you need to be to have to try this?
Well, the overall route on trail was 99 and a quarter miles. I want to say just a hair under 100. And then when we finished the trail, we had a 2.5 mile road walk to get to the car. So a little over 100 miles altogether. And the elevation gain was just barely over 19,000 feet over the 100 miles.
And this was definitely a point to point.
Oh, it definitely a point to point. It was not a loop.
So looking over the little over 100 miles, how many days was the duration of the trip?
The plan called for 9 days, and I think that's right. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 days. 8 days. And that was 2 nights in the Lincoln, and then the remainder of it within Guadalupe Mountains National Park.
And so at the time, before we started hiking, were you already familiar with the majority of the terrain and the trails, or were any of these aspects new to you?
Most of it I was familiar with. The only part that I wasn't familiar with, and you can vouch for this, is the hike up Slaughter Canyon Trail to meet the GRT. That, what was it, 4 miles, 5 miles? I think it was 5.5. It was substantially harder than I thought it would be.
Yeah, it sucked.
It was not fun. It had me rethinking my life.
Yeah, we did question it a few times. I know for me, I had no experience before this trip in Carlsbad, the Lincolns, and so where my familiarity came in was, of course, the Guadalupe Mountains. I looked over the route, and there was nothing like the terrain. I didn't notice anything technical. Even like some of the climbs coming out of, or going up Slaughter, and then also Aqua Dulce, that climb, I looked at that on a map, and I'm like, okay, it's not, I even looked at the trail profile, and I'm like, okay, these aren't too bad. So I definitely went into this backpacking trip probably a little cocky, and it's quickly it quickly
It put us both in our place pretty quick.
oh yeah, yes, absolutely. So leading up to this backpacking trip, did you do any kind of preparation? I don't know, like making sure you were in shape or anything, or like me, you just said, I hike every weekend, I'm going to be fine.
Well, I mean, I try to walk my 5.5, 6 miles every day at the little trail by the house, but there's no elevation there, and I think you can agree with this, that the elevation is what kicks my butt on trail. Once we're on flat ground or going downhill, I'm good, but as soon as that big hill rears its ugly head, I'm struggling every time. I'm struggling. But as far as training, nothing more than just the the normal walk around the block, the little flat conditioning.
And when you're doing that, is it with a weighted backpack or just?
I do wear a weighted pack. It's only about 20 pounds, but I mean, I think if I start at the house and do the loop around the neighborhood, it's right at 6 miles, and I burn around 600 calories. And I think there's maybe 200 feet of elevation in that whole route. So I'm not doing anything close to what we were doing.
Well, I tell you what, like I'm on the Lone Star Hiking Trail almost every weekend, and that's in my mind. I said I'll be fine, and it wasn't. This trip just happened, so it was the first part of February. I had already had a backpacking trip that was cut short in the Guads. We had a couple of days out in the backcountry. So I definitely thought that I was ready. Didn't do anything outside of the norm, and it definitely came back to bite me. So in preparation, and also I get a lot of questions. What do you carry on backpacking trips? So I thought this would be also a great opportunity just to talk about our gear and kind of what we packed, leading up into this trip. So what backpack are you taking?
It's the ULA Ohm 63.
And I have the Hyperlight Junction 3400. What do you like about that backpack?
It's the most comfortable pack I've ever used, and the side pockets on it are so big I can carry 6 liters of water in the side pockets with no issue. The reason I bought that pack was for big water carries in Guad and out at Big Bend. And it just the bonus is it's the most comfortable pack I've ever owned.
I'm a Hyperlight guy. I have some Ospreys, but for my backpack, it's light, which is important to me. And I don't know how comfortable, these almost frameless backpacks are. I think they have two little staves in them, but like it doesn't bother me. It carries well. So yeah, those are my kind of go-to backpacks. I have 4 Hyperlight backpacks, and really, like, there's not one that I would prefer over the other because whether it's a multi-day trip or just an overnight, I'm usually carrying the same type of gear.
Right.
Maybe the water carries are a little bit different, so they all suit my needs. So yeah, I'm a Hyperlight backpack kind of guy. What about your tent?
The tarp tent Double Rainbow LI.
And how do you like that?
I absolutely love that tent. Um, I'm only 6 foot tall, but if I was 7 foot tall, I could still stretch out in it and not touch either end of the tent. Plenty of room for one person. I can get all my stuff in there, spread out at night, and not be laying on top of everything. I really like it.
And I took my brand new, I think it was the second time out, my brand new Hyperlight Mid 1. I bought that tent because I wanted a one person with does have a little bit extra room. But I was tired of putting my Z-Packs duplex in my Hyperlight backpacks. It would balk a little bit. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get me a Hyperlight tent just so it can go with my Hyperlight backpack. But yeah, usually it's the Z-Packs duplex is my go-to, but I'm really liking this Mid 1.
I was kind of jealous of how fast you could set it up.
Yeah, both the Mid 1 and the duplex, if I was pushing it, it would be under about a minute and 40 seconds that I could set it up. Maybe then you got to play around with the guidelines and stuff, but just if you needed to get out of the rain and stuff, I could set it up pretty quick.
Or at the end of the day when you just let me get it set up and let me lie down.
Yes. Yep. We had a lot of those nights where I just set it up, didn't eat dinner, and just went to sleep.
Hey, it is what it is.
Yep. So sleep systems. If I look at everything, this was my first screw up with what I packed. So what did your sleep system consist of for this trip?
Well, the crazy thing is I had been out to the Guads the week before caching water for this trip. There was ice on the ground. There was snow on the trail. I took my 10-degree Griffin gear and stayed nice and toasty warm, but it was, it was down in the teens. So when we started, I took both of my sleeping bags. I was like, okay, which one am I going to carry? And I wound up taking my 20-degree Z-Packs bag, which they say is 20 degrees. I don't believe it's 20 degrees, but it turned out to be perfect for what the conditions we wound up facing. If I had taken that 10-degree bag, I would have sweated to death. Yeah, I took 20-degree Z-Packs bag and a Sea to Summit Ether Light XT.
Well, I saw the weather when you were out there caching our water, and it was, 20s, 30s. And then I started to see how the weather was unfolding for our trip. And I literally said, there is no way it's going to be in the upper 80s.
Yeah, I mean,
something's wrong with this.
Yeah, who would think a 60-degree temperature swing in less than a week?
Yep.
And that's what we were
in February.
Yeah, in February, the 1st of February.
So I saw that, and I'm like, there's absolutely no way I'm gonna be prepared for the cold. So I have my Thermarest X-Therm, which I don't know what the R rating, I can't remember. It's like 7 something. And I had my Outdoor Vitals 0-degree quilt. I was ready to battle the 80-degree temperatures.
Well, and I even took some running tights to sleep in because I knew my legs were going to be sweaty and salty, and I was like, I'm going to be laying in the tent at night and my legs are going to be sticking together. I couldn't wear them. It was just too hot.
Yeah. And what do you think our night temperatures were? High 30s?
It had to be high 30s, maybe low 40s. It was enough when you got up to use the bathroom, you weren't freezing and shivering.
Yeah, I got up and, just walked out and whatever I was sleeping in, which wasn't a lot, and didn't feel cold at all.
Yeah.
And this was the first time that I wanted to test. People say, oh, you should bring clothes to sleep in, like a pajama set, just so you can get all the sweaty clothes off. I did that the first night, and then after that, I just slept in or took off the clothes that I was hiking in and just, slept.
Yeah, that was me. It was just too hot to sleep with a bunch of layers of clothes on.
Yeah, and man, that 0-degree quilt, I love it. It does what I want it to do, but it was so hot I had to open it up and just not let it total cover me up, but maybe stick a leg out or something. Yeah, that was my first mistake, is just not trusting what I saw the weather, because sometimes it's not right. Sometimes I see and it's warmer, but then when you get out there, the weather changes there on a dime.
Well, and you're at elevation, so you're like, okay, it's got to be cooler.
And then the wind and all this other stuff. So yeah, it it won.
It absolutely won.
What about your cooking system? What'd you bring?
My cooking system was just a little Snow Peak isobutane stove and a Snow Peak, I think it's a 700 milliliter pot. And I always vacuum seal my stuff and cook in the bag so I don't have anything to clean up. So my whole cook kit fits in that one 700 milliliter cup.
Nice. So I brought my Tokes 550 and pot, and then the BRS 3000T. I have a couple of those, and they worked out well. I definitely like your cooking system. When we were at, Sunset Reef, and we were chilling, how you cook everything in the bag, and then you put the bag in the pot to let it rehydrate, and then you absolutely have no mess.
No, I don't like having to clean up. I do enough cleaning up and washing dishes at home. I don't want to do it on the trail.
Yep. Yeah, and then also if you think about it, we have massive water carries, and water is a very important commodity, and you don't want to be pouring it into a dish and then chunking out the water to clean it.
Okay, now I've rinsed out my cup, and now I need to. If I'm responsible, I'm going to drink this nasty water instead of wasting it. That's it. That doesn't appeal to me.
And also, this was the first backpacking trip, and I know you and I talked about it, but I started almost every dinner that we have that I can is dehydrating what we cook, vacuum sealing it, and then putting in a oxygen absorber,
Hmm.
vacuum sealing it, and then throwing it in the freezer for a backpacking trip. And this was the first backpacking trip that all of my dinner meals were dinners that I did on my own, dehydrating and stuff. And I definitely, this is the way to go for me for sure.
I think all of mine were repackaged Mountain House meals
Yep.
because I'll buy them in the number 10 cans because it's cheaper. And then instead of vacuum sealing 2 servings like you get in the bags at the store, I'll put in a serving and a half or whatever I think I can eat.
So I think we've talked about it a little bit, but the water carriers are so important in the areas that we're backpacking usually. What was your water carry setup and what was your capacity? So like what were you carrying and then what was the capacity of the carry?
I had 4 1-liter smart water bottles, and in my bag I also had a 2-liter Knock or Knock, however you pronounce it, bladder with my platypus filter. So overall, I had a capacity of 6 liters, but I never carried more than 4.
And that's the exact same setup that I had. I had the 4 1-liter smart water bottles, the filter, uh, the Sinox 2-liter bag just in case. And then, of course, my Trekker Joe's water bottle sleeve.
Oh, absolutely.
And what was different is I usually have 2 on the front, but this time I had just the one on the front. And I had the Trekker Joe's shoulder pouch, for carrying the battery, carrying the snacks. Um, but yeah, usually for these types of trips, I'm double water bottle in the front, but this one I changed it up a little bit, and I definitely will probably go back to the 2 water bottle sleeves in the front. But I did enjoy the pouch; it was easy for snacks. And definitely, I think when I'm day hiking and I have my day pack, I'll probably use the pouch. But like any backpacking trips, all the snacks and stuff I can keep in the hip belt. So I will definitely go back to the double water bottle sleeves. So as we talk about the gear and stuff, did you notice anything you wish you would have packed that you forgot? Or is there anything that you packed that you kind of look back and go, I probably didn't need that, and that was a waste?
Um, I did carry my puffy jacket, which after the first night it was really just extra weight. Um, I wish I had brought a pair of shorts because it was hot. But I saw how tore up your legs got wearing shorts, so I kind of toughed it out through it. But shorts would have been nice, a lot more comfortable, especially once we got out of Carlsbad.
So I think for me, and I almost packed it, I'm a huge supporter of camp chairs. And I am so glad I decided not to take a camp chair because, if you look at our trip, every night we were late to camp. It was dark. There wasn't no time to sit around and chit chat. We were wiped out. And so that would have absolutely been a waste. So I made a good call there. As for the shorts, so I had some REI pants that, that will zip out to shorts.
Hmm.
And you're absolutely right that the shorts were definitely a lot more comfortable than me keeping them as pants. What saved me is I got some alpaca socks that came up to my knees. And so like the first day I wore those, and I couldn't imagine. I think it was the second day where I traded out socks and they were not as long, and the sun was just killing the back of my calves. Like, to the listeners on this trip, I don't know if you've ever been out to the Guads, but just imagine it's in the upper 80s. You're out in the middle of the desert. There's hardly any trees. So that sun, I don't care if it's 30 degrees, that sun is hitting you and it is just destroying you.
No clouds.
Yes. And so your hands, if you don't have like sun gloves, if you were wearing short sleeve because it was hot and you didn't have sun sleeves or something, you were going to be in trouble. And so, yeah, I mean, the first day I transitioned to shorts. And then after that, the next days I was back to the long socks or pants because the sun was just brutal. And speaking of pants and shorts, what about your clothes choices? How do you think we did on those?
I feel like I did pretty good. I wore just the regular Wrangler Trail Terrain or ATG, whatever those are, the cheap ones you get at Walmart for $25, and an Aftco fishing long sleeve hooded sun shirt. And it was hot, but I didn't get sunburned. Protected my bald head from the sun. I think I nailed it pretty good on what I did wear.
Yeah, I think like you, looking back, I had the puffy and that was a waste. I had a couple of sun hoodies actually that I brought, one for a little bit colder weather, and I actually wore those at night, or wore it at night. But for the 3 days that we were hiking, I had just got the Outdoor Vitals, kind of like a smart wool sun hoodie. So it's real thin, breathable, moisture wicking. And I was very happy with it. And that's all I had on. Like, I didn't have a shirt under it. I just wore that. Of course, sunglasses, I think, is important, especially out there. And buff to, cover up any exposed facial or head areas. And then my Marion Outdoors hat. And I think, those items certainly facilitated a comfort and to keep the sun off me. Hands got a little sunburn because I forgot my sun gloves, but other than that, I really can't complain.
Yeah, I had a hat as well, and the hood on that sun hoodie fits over it really well. I think the only bad thing about what I wore, the shoes I took already had about 350 miles on them, and they were starting to give out. But
Oh yeah.
they made it.
All right, so we packed up, we got everything kind of sorted out. What about the permits and any kind of stuff that we had to pay for? What did we have to do? Because some of the stuff I definitely don't know.
Well, Carlsbad Caverns National Park, if you have a annual pass, you can get in for free.
Mm-hmm.
Carlsbad Caverns does not charge anything for their backcountry camping, unlike Guadalupe Mountains National Park. The drawback is, and this is no disrespect to the people working at Carlsbad Caverns National Park, but they don't know anything about camping in the backcountry. 99% of the people that come to Carlsbad Caverns go to the cavern. You'll go to the front counter to get a permit, and they'll look at you like you've got three heads or something. So you have to explain what you're doing. I'm camping in the backcountry. I need a permit to set up my tent. And they'll, once they understand what you're asking for, you're good to go. But when you first walk in, they think you want to pull an RV up and camp in the parking lot. So there's no charge to camp in Carlsbad Caverns National Park. You're supposed to camp 200 feet away from the trail, which, as you saw, there's not much trail to be off of. So real hard to find a place to camp in Carlsbad Caverns National Park. Once you get into the Lincoln National Forest, it's national forest. It's free. We're taxpayers. We pay for it already. You can camp wherever you want. Check with the county or the Forestry Service before you do to see if there's a burn ban. Because if there is, no fires. But if there's no burn ban, you can have a campfire in the national forest. We didn't have time for that, but it's an option. And then, of course, once you get into Guadalupe, you have to get permits in advance. And the rangers there, I'll brag on them. The rangers there, they know what you're doing. They know what the GRT is. They know that people are entering the park from the Lincoln National Forest, so they're willing to work with you on your dates and where to park your car and all that stuff. They're very understanding.
And I think the only thing to add, if you are to the listeners, if you are like what we did, is started into New Mexico and traveled down through the Guads, or you're just in the Guads backcountry camping, you need a wag bag for every night that you, outside of the permit, they're going to ask you, if you're out in the backcountry for 2 nights, you need to bring to the desk 2 wag bags, or you can buy them, if you don't have them, at their store.
And I believe that's only for Guadalupe. I don't believe Carlsbad has instituted that rule yet. And I don't think they ever will, because their backcountry sees so few visitors.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was the most shocking thing for me, is when we exited Slaughter Canyon and actually hit the GRT. It's the GRR. It's Guadalupe Ridge Route. There's no trail.
Oh, now to be fair, every once in a while you can pick up a little bit of trail.
Yeah.
But you've got to keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of this next section, I would like to just talk about the plan, just to go through each of the days, what the plan was before we get into the reality. So leading up to this hike, you went out a week before we started to cache water.
Correct.
And so, through this plan, you identified the starting and ending points for each of the days, and especially through Carlsbad National Park and through the Lincolns, that's that area like the back of your hand. So what roads, the Forest Service roads that you can drive on and get to, you had that thing down. And so if we kind of just look at this, let's go through each day where we cache, where we were going to plan on staying. So in this planning, you had went out and done some of this stuff. So if we just talk about day 1, talk about the starting point and where we were planning to camp, mileage, and then where we were caching.
Okay. Well, you want to start with Sam giving us a ride to the trailhead?
Well, just the plan. This is just the planning. So, yeah, and then for the actual, then we'll go through how that worked.
Started at the Slaughter Canyon Trailhead in Carlsbad Caverns National Park. I was assured that we could leave a vehicle there and it would be safe, but we wound up not having to. But the first, I want to say it's a little over 5 miles of the route was the Slaughter Canyon Trail, not the Slaughter Canyon Cave Trail. There's 2 trails at that trailhead. One's to the cave and one goes deeper into the backcountry. That first 5 miles, the first 3 of it's pretty flat, walking through a wash, and then you begin the big climb up to the GRT, and then you follow as you said, the Guadalupe Ridge route. That first day was supposed to be 16 miles, and I had found the week before, I had found a little campsite that I think we both agreed would have been perfect if we could have made it there that night.
Right.
But Ben and I went out the week before and cached water at the campsite on Forest Service Road 527 and left some water there, found some nice flat places to camp. That was the plan for the first night. 16 miles and camp within the Lincoln.
All right. And then day 2?
Day 2, we would continue along Forest Service 527 over to the Cave Canyon Trailhead, which is where trails 201, 222, and 223 all come together, and follow the official GRT route up the trail, across the ridge, and up to the Dark Canyon Lookout, which we were supposed to take us a nice break there. I just realized when we got done with the trip, we didn't go down and visit the cave, but there's Cottonwood Cave is right there at the lookout. And then we would continue on along Forest Service Road 201 to the end of Forest Service Road 540. Finally pick up some single track at Camp Wilderness Ridge and follow that single track to just before the New Mexico-Texas border. And camp there's a nice little campsite there. I stayed there the week before, cached some water at the campsite, and that would have been another 16-mile day.
Yeah, and to the listeners, that is, I think we were 0.2 of a mile from entering into the Guadalupe Mountains.
Oh yeah, it's right at the state line.
And you could have fires there, but if we crossed into Texas, we would not be able to.
Correct.
All right. And when I saw the plan, this was the day 3, where I was dreading. I was absolutely dreading coming down Permian Reef and then refilling with water and then heading back up McKittrick Ridge campsite. So talk us through day 3, what the plan was.
The plan for day 3 was a little over 12 and a half miles. We would start right outside of the Texas-New Mexico border. First thing in the morning, go through the turnstile into Guadalupe Mountains National Park, down the Permian Reef Trail to the McKittrick Canyon contact station, where we could fill up with all the water we could drink. We could use the bathroom. We could throw our trash away. We could shuttle cars if need be. And then we would begin the long slog up McKittrick Canyon Trail to the McKittrick Canyon backcountry campsites. 12 and a half miles for the day.
And again, to the listeners, when I saw this in the plan, I giggled at day 1, I laughed at day 2, and day 3 gave me some worry. Now, when we get into the actual experience, it's a whole different story. But that's where I was when we kind of started going through this plan.
It was a solid plan, other than the issues we ran into.
Oh no, this plan. Okay, first, just to put this out there, this is not the last attempt that I'm going to try to do this, or we're going to do it.
Absolutely.
But so yes, the beauty of hiking and backpacking is you don't always win. All right, so day 4, we're up at McKittrick Ridge campsite. Talk to us about day 4.
Day 4, the plan was to continue along the McKittrick Canyon Trail until we hit the Tejas Trail, take Tejas north and down to Dog Canyon Campground, which we were hoping would be open, fill up on water, and then leave Dog Canyon, go up Bush Mountain Trail to the Marcus campsite and stay at Marcus.
And so this was when we got to the park, and we're fixing to execute this plan, that was the first hiccup that we had that we will talk about here in a minute, is that Dog Canyon was supposed to be open, then it wasn't open, but then we were able to cache water there just in case. But this was kind of the first wrinkle that we had, because Dog Canyon not being open facilitate us for the pre-day, so before day one, of caching water, and it was a heck of a hike that we had to do because dog was closed. But we will talk about that here in a bit. So yeah, so I think McKittrick Ridge to Marcus, hitting Marcus is not that big of a deal. There's not a lot of elevation gain.
It's only a 12-mile day.
Yep, only a 12-mile day, and passing through Dog Canyon. It's not a big water carry to get to Dog Canyon that we were planning. From Dog Canyon, depending on if it was open and had water, it may be a little bit heavier of a carry to Marcus, and then from Marcus into day 5. So talk about day 5, what the plan was.
Well, the plan on day 5 was to leave Marcus and head up. Oh goodness, what's the name of that trail? Head up the Marcus Trail. Leave Marcus, head up the Marcus Trail, hit Blue Ridge, head west on Blue Ridge, past the Blue Ridge campsites until we hit Bush. Follow the Bush Mountain Trail over to Bush Mountain, so we could knock out a few high points on the way. And then follow it back past the Tejas campsites, or past Pine Top, to the Tejas Trail, and follow Tejas Trail down to the Tejas campsite.
Yep, and then that's where we had some water cached leading into day 6. And I think day 5 was, about 11 and a half miles?
11 and a half miles.
All right, day 6, we're at Tejas.
Like I said, this whole route through the Guad backcountry is so circuitous because we wanted to do as much as we could in the backcountry without repeating any trails. So we would leave Tejas and go up the Juniper Trail into the Bowl, and then take the Bowl Trail up to Hunter Peak, check out Hunter Peak, drop down Bear Canyon, do the Smith Springs Loop, and then take the Foothills Trail around back to Pine Springs.
And at Pine Springs, I had a reservation for campsite 19. So, that we were going to stay at Pine Springs. And that day was, 11 and a half?
11 and a half. Another 11 and a half mile
11 and a half mile day. All right. And then we get into the fun. This day 7 is the only trail outside before this trip. Well, I don't think this trip there was a trail that broke me. It was just the sun broke me. But day 7, I had a little bit of worry because we backpacked from Pine Springs to Shoemart campsite, and we got a late start. I just assumed, just quickly looking at the map, this is a flat trail, no big deal. Expecting it to be a trail. But when we did it a few years ago, we lost the trail more times than we were on the trail. It's way overgrown because not a lot of people get back there. There's a lot of exposure through Shoemart Canyon where you're stepping and you can't really see where you're stepping, so that's worrisome. And that trail broke me. When we got to Shoemart campsite, I was with Henning and Sam, which, if you listen to the podcast, we've talked about them a lot. We all agreed that we're not hiking back through there. We're going to hike out to the highway, and we're going to hitchhike. So that's how much fun that trail was. So I was a little bit worrisome about day 7, but...
Well, the El Cap Trail is the one trail in the park that I haven't done. So I was kind of looking forward to it, but new territory. It's
my favorite trail of the park. I don't know, it did break me. There's no way I was going to hike back, but it's spectacular. So day 7 was we were going to leave Pine Springs campsite 19 at early in the morning, and to make sure we had enough time to get out to Shoemart, because it's like 11, 12 miles to get out there.
Well, it was not only the El Cap Trail, but also the Salt Basin Loop.
Oh, that was included.
Yeah. So it was around 11 and a half miles was the plan.
Yeah, that would have been a good one.
Oh, it would have been awesome. It will be awesome.
Yes. All right, day 8. What were we gonna do?
Day 8, jump on Williams Ranch Road, walk the road out to the highway, and then 2.5 mile road walk down to Good Guard Land Company.
Yeah, so this is also to the listeners. If you listen to, I think it's episode 46 or 47, it's part 1 with Kim. I had like a little advert for the Good Guad Land Company. This is a really cool place. It's definitely primitive, but if you can't get a camping spot in the Guadalupe Mountains, or you're looking for, a place to camp, it definitely you should. You can Google it, go to Hip Camp,
If you're
check it
looking for
out.
solitude,
Yes.
is the place to be.
And if you're looking for a spectacular view of El Capitan, this is the place too, because it's just south 11 miles from the park, so it's just south of the park, and you have a magnificent view of El Capitan. But yeah, so we were going to park my car there, and hike out to the highway, and instead of hitchhiking back to Pine Springs, as Lori said, I will not be allowed to do that anymore. We were just going to leave my car at the Good Guad Land Company. The gentleman who owns the land, his name's Wes, very nice, very responsive on Hip Camp, but he allowed us to leave our car there, to get it. So that was the plan. We had 8 days and then a pre-day. The pre-day was really just to cache some water. So when we hit Tejas campsite, we would have some water to get us to Pine Springs. Now, the experience.
Dun dun dun.
Dun, dun, dun. All right. So we get to Guadalupe Mountains. We meet up in the parking lot at day -1, I guess, because it's not day 1.
Yeah.
Officially on the trail. It's the pre-day. We're feeling good. Give Todd a big old hug. We go into the office, start getting our Guadalupe permits from Leah. She is a ranger at the park, and she is the absolute best ranger there is ever. So, we all sat there, talked through the plan. She okayed it. The first dilemma at that moment was Dog Canyon is still closed.
Correct.
So when we left the office, we were sitting in the car saying, all right, we have everything cached. We have, day 3 heading to McKittrick. We can fill up there, or even in the creek in McKittrick, that'll have water. But when we get to past Marcus, we have no water out there. We cannot easily access that area where we need to cache water, because the easiest way to do is from Dog Canyon, head up Tejas to maybe a little bit north of Tejas campsite, dump some water, or at Blue Ridge. We were going to be carrying 10 liters of water. Well, we did carry 10 liters of water, and we had to make a decision. How are we going to get the water to where we need it? And we definitely did not want to go up Bear or Tejas. So, Todd, take it away.
Well, we wound up going up Tejas. Each of us was carrying 6 liters of water, which was it sucked, but it had to be done. There's no water in the backcountry, so we've got to have enough. We've got to have enough water to get us from Marcus all the way across the park, and to stay a night in the park. So we were stuck having to make alternative arrangements and cache some water inside the park.
And what I remember, and now you look back and it's just funny, but we literally sat in my car for way too much way too much time debating, okay, do we really have to go up Tejas? I mean, like we were, I don't know, like a helicopter could come pick us up and take us out. Like we did not, we knew we had to. It was clear.
Just didn't want
We
to.
did not want to. We even thought about, what happens if we drove out to Dog Canyon and just hopped the fence? What we could just say, oh, we didn't know, or like what could be the punishments? I mean, it was everything to not go up Tejas with 10, 6-7 liters of water apiece to get up there. But at the end of the day, we decided, yeah, I mean, it's the only thing that we can do. It was still early enough in the morning so it was probably, we got the permits by 8:30, and by 9:30 we had made the decision. There's nothing we can do. We just got to go do it.
Well, and the crazy thing was, it was still cold.
Yes.
We were going up Tejas, and the wind's blowing 20 miles an hour, and I had to put on my puffy because it was so cold.
Yeah.
And then 2 days later, we're sweating. Just, oh my gosh, I'd give anything for a swimming pool to jump into.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, like heading up Tejas, I've headed up Tejas probably. So this trip, this pre-day and this day one, us leaving cars and stuff in the park. This was my 21st trip to Guadalupe Mountains. And I don't know how many times I've hiked up Tejas, and every time I'm heading either to Tejas campsite or Juniper Trail or through bush, I always say there's a cabin just north of the top out I want to go see, and I always forget about it and walk right past it. So that was the highlight. Is we started probably about 9:30 in the morning. It was still cold somehow, and we carried all that water up Tejas, had a nice little break.
Yep.
And then we walked past the cabin, and I think because we thought we would be able to see it from the trail, but you can't. Made it to Tejas campsite, cached the water, had some lunch, hiked back, and then we remembered, oh wait, let's actually go try to find this cabin. We found it. It was awesome. We got to sit up there and chill for a little bit, and hiked back. And I think the pre-day was a little over 10 miles.
A little over 10 miles. Pretty good chunk of elevation.
And let me tell you, it felt amazing when we dumped off all that water. We were like running down.
Well, and overall, it was just, as much as we dreaded doing it, it was a really good little day hike. It was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. This was the second time that I was able to hike with you. Second time second time that I actually, we were hiking together. So yeah, it was nice. It was nice to hang out, share the trail with you, and really start to focus in and get ready to what we thought we were going to experience, which when the actuality of us, it was way more than what I was expecting.
That -1 day was a really good warm up for what was to come.
Yep. We got to practice whining and crying, and
I thought I had it all out of my system, but then the next day, I found some more.
So there is a wonderful spot. So we cached the water, we came down, we survived. The plan was, I have one of my best friends, Sam, as you know, we talk about him a lot on the podcast. And he's been with me on almost every adventure, no matter what state I'm hiking in. He, always makes it a point, or almost always, that he's a part of it. He was driving in from New Mexico. He lives now in Los Cruces, and he was going to pick us up at McKittrick Trailhead, at 8:30, and he was going to drive, I guess it's like 30, 35 minutes to Slaughter Canyon Trailhead. And the Slaughter Canyon Trailhead, it's just right south of White's.
Right. From Sunset Reef, that campground that we stayed at before we started all of this, you can look up on the ridge and see the Carlsbad Caverns Visitor Center. And that same road that Sunset Reef is on is the road that dead ends into the Slaughter Canyon Trailhead.
Oh, okay. We woke up from the Sunset Reef, which is a spectacular place to stay. It's clean bathrooms. It's free, first come, first serve. They have about 6 tent campsites and then maybe that many RV sites.
Yeah, something like that. 6 or 7.
Yeah, and if you have a van where you have restroom and all that, like you don't even have to park at one of the RV spots. You can park along the fence. So it's spectacular if you're looking for some BLM land and you don't have a reservation anywhere or you couldn't get a reservation. You definitely have to check that sucker out.
It's got great views. It's quiet. It's far enough off the highway where you're not listening to road noise all night. Good spot.
And one thing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but one thing that I always read in comments of the BLM land, like across the highway or in that area, a lot of people complain about rats and rats getting up in their vehicles and chewing stuff or having to combat that stuff. I didn't notice any animals at night while we were camping, or like you could see them sometimes scurrying around. I didn't see anything, so that was really shocking to me.
I've probably stayed there a dozen times or more, and have never seen any animals. You hear the coyotes at night, which is one of my favorite sounds is listening to the coyotes sing. But that week before that, Ben and I went out and cached water, we stayed there, and I just threw my bedroll out on the ground and just cowboy camped at one of the tent sites. No animals, no nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely to the listeners, check it out, look it up, Google it. It's definitely worth the effort. And if you don't have a place to stay, it's absolutely wonderful. All right, so we wake up on day one. We are ready to rock. And that wraps up another exciting episode of the Trailblazing Texas podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode today, and stay tuned for our next episode where we will pick back up where we left off and guarantee to uncover many more hiking gems and share many more tips to enhance your experience on the trail. Until then, happy trails and happy hiking.